You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. A car air freshener. That's why 22-year-old Daunte Wright was pulled over by cops in the Minneapolis suburb. He was asked to step out of the car, handcuffed. He tried to get back into the car when an officer fired a shot, killing him. It was captured on body cam footage where she says she had a taser. We're warning you right now, folks. If it's a trigger warning, we'll give you an advance notice. We're going to show this in about 10 seconds. This body cam footage was released today by the police department in that city. And so let's show it right now. You heard her say, I just shot him. She yelled taser. Okay, we got some problems with that because a taser doesn't weigh the same as a gun. Here's a police chief of Brooklyn City commenting on this, what he termed an accidental shooting.
As you can hear, the officer, while struggling with Mr. Wright, shouts, taser, taser, several times. That is part of the officer's training prior to deploying a taser, which is a less lethal device. That is done to make her partners aware, as well as the subject, that a taser deployment will be imminent. During this encounter, however, the officer drew their handgun instead of their taser. For informational purposes, we train with our handguns on our dominant side and our taser on our weak side. So if you're right-handed, you carry your firearm on your right side and you carry your taser on the left. This is done purposefully and is trained. As I watch the video and listen to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. This appears to me, from what I've viewed and the officer's reaction and distress immediately after, that this was an accidental discharge that resulted in the tragic death of Mr. Wright.
Here's the mayor of Brooklyn Center.
Let me be very clear. My position is that we cannot afford to make mistakes that lead to the loss of life of other people in our profession. And so I do fully support releasing the officer of her duties.
Now, the incident that happened about 10 miles from where George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin, again, who's on trial for the death of George Floyd. Last night, thousands took to the streets and were met with police in riot gear and tear gas. Today, there were numerous questions at the news conference where the mayor was questioned about the response to the folks who were out there protesting. Folks, they're protesting right now in Brooklyn Center, and they expect there to be more protests tonight. Let's go to our law enforcement panel. Redditt Hudson, he is founder of the National Coalition of Law Enforcement Officers for Justice Reform and Accountability, retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, and both of them join us right now. I want to start with you, Cheryl. So take us through. First of all, guys in the control room, I want you to cue the video up. And Cheryl, this is what I don't understand. She pulls the gun out. She thinks it's a taser. It's about 5 seconds go by before she fires. How does she not know that she grabbed the gun and the taser? Don't they weigh differently? Don't they feel differently?
Absolutely. And so what we're hearing now is a police chief trying to minimize and mitigate behavior that should have never occurred. They understand that city liability will soon follow. And I do believe that this police chief serves at the pleasure of the mayor, who said he has a problem with this. So he has an opportunity, an affirmative responsibility, the mayor, to make sure that the police chief gets this right. They are now trying to craft a scenario that will sit well with the public, and it's bothersome. First of all, you don't even tase someone because they're about to drive away. You have the guy's car, you've run his plate, hopefully, tactfully, you should have. You've had his license plate, hopefully. You know who he is and where he's likely to go. Why would you even tase him because he's running, because he had air fresheners hanging from his rearview mirror and possibly a warrant? Makes no sense.
See, this is the thing for me, Redditt, that's so problematic here. And that is, you pull them over for air fresheners. Why? Now, after you pull them over, they discovered there's a warrant. What was the total? $346. $346. That's what the total amount was. I was on social media earlier where someone actually pulled up that particular information that explained what took place, and apparently it was 2 minor misdemeanors. One, a marijuana case totaling $346. Pled guilty, filed for the deferred payment, and he missed a remote hearing. Okay. Now, Reddit, the people out there, I've already seen the right-wing white conservatives, never flee, why run? How about you don't pull your gun out and you shoot somebody or tase somebody over a misdemeanor traffic ticket?
Absolutely, Roland. Meanwhile, you got white armed insurrectionists storming the Capitol, murdering police officers, leaving unscathed. We've seen it time and again. It's almost, you hate to repeat this story as repetitive as it is, but the reality is we have to do something different, man. I think we're way past the point of debating whether or not black people are policed differently. It's very obvious. It's been obvious for generations. At this point, what we have to be is strategic, intentional, and aggressive. Points of attack, union contracts. Get rid of qualified immunity. I think the state of Maryland just did that, but that needs to happen all over the country. It's one of the things that allow officers to act with such impunity and be so reckless. If you see the tape again, when you asked Sergeant Dorsey about it, one of the other things that jumps out, and I'm sure the sergeant probably observed this too, is how she's moving the weapon around prior to discharge, because there's an officer initially partially obscuring her target, and she waits until he gets out of the way. She's kind of moving the weapon around him so as not to hit him with whatever's in her hand. Obviously, she has to see it in order to aim it. So I've got questions about this account that she thought she had her taser, which is holstered on the opposite side from your strong hand. It's just another reckless murder of a black body by police officers in this country. And until we see real accountability, that's the only training that matters, man. That's the only training we need right now. People need to start going to prison. Cities need to pay the money to the families that have been injured, but people need to start going to prison. Derek Chauvin, perhaps this officer after the investigation. I can hold anything in my hand, man, and say anything I want to. It doesn't necessarily indicate what my intention is. If I point a gun at you and say, lollipop, 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 and pull the trigger, I've still shot you to death. And that statement that I made is not exculpatory at all.
Dr. Lacey Davis, founder of Black Cops Against Police Brutality, he also joins us. What is strange to me, you've got a cop on the opposite side of the car. You've got a cop who's dealing with Daunte. You got another police officer. You got a minimum of three. We didn't see anywhere. You got a minimum of three police officers. He hops back in the car. Again, what I don't understand is, how is your first instinct to grab a weapon, taser or gun? A gun wasn't found in the car. There was no indication that there was a weapon in the vehicle. She's on the side of the vehicle. The other officer's on the side with her. The other officer's on the other side. He's not about to run over somebody. So I'm just trying to understand, from a police standpoint, what causes you to pull out a taser or a gun in that circumstance?
Well, Roland, you guys are touching on it, but I think we're about 200 years past where we should be in having this discussion. And that is that what the thought process is contempt of cop. It is that you are black and we have told you to do something and we expect you to do it. Law enforcement continually repeats this theme of the foundation of how policing comes to be. Slave patrols, controlling the movement of black people at all costs. And so while we logically don't understand it because we cannot get into the minds of that type of pathology, it makes sense to me of 20 years of watching this and now studying this, because we see this continually. We do not see the same kind of pretextual stops and misrepresentation of taser, and shooting a gun of white people. As my colleague Redditt Hudson just said, we saw this on the 6th. It was very clear. They fired one shot on the 6th at an insurrection where people had guns and cops were being murdered, beat, tased. They were doing everything you could do to a police officer. And you saw this extreme discipline. Yet every time the subject is black or brown or appears to be, we've got these excuses that we're making for this misbehavior and this police violence that is inherent against people of color in this country.
And the thing that, the thing that is amazing to me here is how immediately it becomes, it's just pity the officer involved. Listen to this nonsense from Martha McCallum on Fox News today.
But also make sure there's due process and fairness.
Yeah, I mean, that is the question. And you hear all these individuals talking about reform and accountability, and you hear the emotion also coming from these police officers. We just heard it from the sheriff. We heard it earlier from the chief of police who oversaw the officer who committed this act. And, you have to think about that person as well today, because that officer's life is forever changed by this what is being referred to as an accident. What needs to be done? I mean, you all looked at this in so many different ways.
Really, Cheryl? So the officer, her life is forever changed. He's dead, though. He can't come back.
They say that her life is forever changed, but, I can't speak to this officer's heart, certainly, but we do know that many of these officers are repeat offenders. Here in California, Vallejo Police Department has a group referred to as the Fatal 14. Why? Because they've had numerous fatal shootings. And so is this her first encounter? Will it be her last? I don't know. But unless and until there's accountability that's commensurate with the mistake, with the oops, then officers are going to continue to live to offend again. And qualified immunity is certainly a problem. But before we get to that, why don't we take a look at decertifying officers once they're found having committed some sort of policy violation, fired from that department, so they don't have the benefit of then going next door and joining a neighboring police department and doing the same thing all over again.
The thing here, Redditt, that we continue to see, that we continue to deal with over and over and over again, is this was an accident. It was this, and then it's only a few bad apples, and these things happen. Again, what is strange to me, I think about the story we did out of Florida, where they pulled over these two young men. It was a wrong car. and the brother was about to drive away, and the officers fired into the vehicle. Neither one was in danger. Neither one was going to be hit, killing the brother who was behind the wheel. And the cops pulled over the wrong car. We're going to talk about in a second the lieutenant in Virginia. And in the video, we're going to show it. He says, "I do not want to get out of the car." This Daunte Wright story is a perfect example of why a black person's like, hey, I do not want to get out of the car. And all these other folks, again, who keep yelling, well, why did he try to break away and jump in? Look, people do stupid stuff and they freak out. But doing something stupid doesn't mean that you get shot and killed. But we also got to go back to the most basic front. Who the hell stops somebody for air fresheners? Okay, I don't know what the air fresheners hanging from a rearview mirror? Seriously?
Right. And in the case of the lieutenant's stop, I think I heard it called in as a felony stop, which is incorrect. The probable cause that they offered up was that they could not see his license plate, or his license plate was obscured. But Dr. Davis touched on it, man. The foundation of the problem is white supremacy and the way that it permeates the culture of policing in America, especially as it relates to black bodies. Those guns get fired into cars with black drivers. Those people that get choked out on the street are black people. Those people who are murdered in front of us, in broad daylight while the officer sticks his hands in his damn pockets and calmly looks at the camera, are black bodies. That doesn't happen with black officers and white people. In the rare instances that it does, for example, in Minneapolis, the same city that Derek Chauvin is on trial in, the same city where young Daunte Wright just lost his wife, Muhammad Noor shot a white woman, unarmed white woman there while he was on duty, and he is serving at least 12 years in prison as we speak. No police union came to defend him. They didn't get him an attorney. There was none of that Blue Lives Matter talk. So it is very much also a race issue when it comes to how we're policed in this country. And I would say to my fellow officers, those who are currently in service and those who are retired, two of whom are on this show with me today, who were core founding members of NCLEOJ. This is the first time we've ever had an opportunity to speak together. Look at where you put your money, man. Pull out of those unions, man. Pull out of those unions and start your own union, similar to what they've done here in St. Louis back in the 70s. The Ethical Society of Police is a predominantly black officers association, but you can no longer support, man, those people who do this in your community and then pay to have it defended. Derek Chauvin's lawyer is being paid for by the police union there. You need to get out of these collective bargaining agreements. The cities around the country need to reevaluate whether political power and will exist to pull out of those collective bargaining agreements, rip them up, man, so that we can start to see real accountability. That is the only thing that will change this. People going to prison. Derek Chauvin going to prison for the rest of his life is the best training that police officers in Minneapolis can get relative to how to interact with black citizens who are also protected ostensibly under the Constitution of the United States.
DeLacy, that is a point that I've also long said, that as long as police officers never get indicted, as long as they're found not guilty, they can operate with impunity. But until you begin to have folks go to prison and they realize, I screw up, I might be headed to prison. Amber Geiger, headed to prison. The cop who killed Walter Scott, everybody forgets, that was a mistrial. He pled guilty to civil rights violations, not murder in the state of South Carolina. He's sitting in prison. That is how you deal with Laquan McDonald, that police officer, sitting in prison. That's what we have to deal with. And so it's amazing how the law and order crowd gets real quiet, wrongdoing by cops.
Absolutely. So let's remember, white supremacy is predicated on controlling and maldistributing all of the resources in a community, up to and including us. And as a result, you see pretextual stops, which is what you're talking about when we stop you for something hanging in the mirror. There's no crime. I mean, really, it's supposed to be an obstruction, and it shouldn't be a primary reason for a stop. It should be secondary in many of the places where we do work. Additionally, as Sergeant Dorsey said, you know you don't see the plate, you know who the person is, you know their name, you run the plate, you know the description of the vehicle, you let them go, and we get them another day. In fact, I've mailed tickets or warrants to people to summons them to come to court because they drove off on me. It's not that big a deal, except when it's people of color, because it's a deeper seated issue. It's the real issue of race reckoning in this country around law enforcement, which is why other folks are feeling sympathetic toward an officer. Even if I accepted the officer's argument in this instance that it was an accident, there still must be real consequences for police incompetence. Because at the very minimum, you're incompetent. There's a different amount of power that is needed to squeeze the trigger on a gun than on a taser. You're right. The weight is different. It feels different. It's on a different part of your body. You should be grabbing it differently. And therefore, even in that instance, you must be held accountable. And so our community has to develop the political will. We have to use our economic resources to punish those folks that will not stand up for our community and reward those who do, just as they're screaming about them moving the baseball game and all the other events. What has to happen is that we've now have to come together, even with those black folks who are Negroes on the police force, because we have some who do not have the testicular fortitude to stand up for our community because they believe that they're going to pay a price, and they will, but we must be willing to pay the price. My colleagues here have all paid a very high price for standing up for our community, but we believe that that is what we sign up for when we take that oath to protect and serve the community.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.